Today we've got Congressman Ted Lieu. Thanks so much for coming on.
Honored to be on your show, Brian.
Thanks. So right off the bat, I'm going to tell you a series of words, and I'm not going to tell you why. The words are person, woman, man, camera, TV.
You know, I can not only repeat 5 words, I can do 6.
Let's hear that.
All right. Person, woman, man, camera, TV, elephant.
You know, you might just have the mental acuity to be president of the United States.
Yes, I'm super excited about that because Donald Trump has set the bar so low that if you can pass a dementia test, somehow you're qualified to be president.
So in all seriousness, you're on the House Judiciary Committee, so I'm really happy you're here because there's a lot to talk about. So let's start off with Portland. That's the big story of the week. Trump has sent federal troops into Portland. First of all, is it legal to send paramilitary forces into American cities?
I believe it's an abuse of power. One of the ways that Bill Barr has been able to send his secret army all over the place, both in D.C. as well as Portland, is through the deputization function of the U.S. Marshal Service. So it turns out the U.S. Marshal can deputize other federal officials to then go do jobs that they were not trained for. And that's what we're seeing in both Portland and D.C. So I'm working on legislation with Representative Earl Blumenauer that's going to shut that deputization function down, and hopefully it'll mitigate the situation. At the same time, we need to hold additional hearings and put public pressure on both DHS and the Department of Justice to stop sending in federal forces where they're not wanted and not needed.
Do you think this is being done to quell violence or actually incite it?
The Trump administration has actually inflamed tensions. If you listen to local officials in Portland, they were saying that things were getting better, things were getting calmer, and then these unmarked, untrained federal units showed up that then made things worse. So these federal units should leave, and I believe they are not there under a legitimate reason. That's why both the Department of Homeland Security Inspector General and the Department of Justice's Inspector General have opened investigations into what these federal units are doing, both in D.C. as well as in Portland.
Right now, as it stands, do local officials, like in Portland, for example, Mayor Wheeler, do they have the power to expel these federal forces from the city?
Unfortunately, it looks like they do not. And so I think they also don't want to risk additional confrontation, because you can imagine how bad it might be if you have another local law enforcement armed force sort of engaging with the federal armed force. So you don't actually want to risk that kind of violence. But right now, there is no authority for, unfortunately, local officials to kick out the federal units.
Even if we operate under their excuse, which is to, quote, restore order, ensuring public safety, whether it's during protests or not, is a state police power, which is reserved to the states under the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. So is there legal justification on solid ground?
Yeah, so for any Republican elected official who champions liberty and freedom and states' rights, who remains silent right now, they're just a bunch of hypocrites. What we see is the federal government trampling states' rights. They are going into local areas to address local issues, and the state and local officials do not want these federal units there, and the people do not. So what you see in Portland is, in fact, more and more protesters showing up, including a lot of very courageous moms every night to make sure that these federal units are not doing bad things. And we also saw on videotape some of these federal units simply making illegal arrests. You can't just take a protester off the street who is not doing anything wrong and then interrogate that person. That is a legal arrest. And they stuck this person into an unmarked car. There is no reason for that. We do not have secret police in the United States. We're not a banana republic, and the Trump administration needs to withdraw these troops.
Speaking of hypocrisy, what about all those Second Amendment defenders out there? I mean, this is what they've been warning about, a tyrannical government takeover, right? And then when we actually have a tyrannical government takeover, when federal forces are coming into American cities and basically kidnapping people, why haven't we heard from anyone on the right?
Their lack of spines among my Republican colleagues has been a great, shocking disappointment these last 3.5 years. At the same time, we know that they're making up reasons to send in these federal units. If you look at what DHS acting head Wolf tweeted out initially when he visited Portland, it was a bunch of graffiti that he was going after.
Right.
So our federal units are not the graffiti police either. And it is this massive federal intervention to, stop graffiti. And it really is completely out of proportion to what's actually happening in Portland.
Right, and I believe we had CBP there as well, because where else would the border police, the border patrol, be needed than Oregon?
We also saw these random federal units in Washington, D.C. There was that very unfortunate incident where Bill Barr cleared out peaceful protesters at Lafayette Park, and and then sent pepper spray canisters at them. That actually had a marked effect on Donald Trump's approval rating, dropping him down even further. And just as a matter of campaign strategy, I don't understand why Trump is doing this. It is making him look even worse. The chaos that people see, they're now attributing to Donald Trump. And what he needs to do is really calm things down, not actually make things worse and inflame tensions even more.
And yet at the same time, I mean, this has been his campaign strategy from the beginning, since before 2016. I mean, it's inciting these, wedge issues, basically a culture war. And that's the only way he knows how to win, because he's incapable of uniting people. He's incapable of solving problems. The only thing he knows how to do is divide people. And if that means, inciting tensions in cities to scare people in suburbia or scare rural America, because this is what your neighborhood's going to look like if you elect Democrats, well, then that's what he's going to do.
So one of the great things about America is the American people learn from our mistakes, and we can change. And the American people, if you look at multiple opinion polls, in fact, have changed. Now the American people view this chaos as being caused by Donald Trump. Right. The American people understand that protests is something that's protected by the First Amendment. They support protesters. They oppose this heavy-handed federal crackdown. And so while the American people have already moved on and changed, Donald Trump seems incapable of that. And that's one reason he's flailing in the polls.
So let's move on to Bill Barr. As of this recording, Bill Barr is set to testify on July 28th. We're recording before that. What is it you plan to accomplish with this hearing?
I would like to ask some questions about these federal units in both D.C. and Portland, what the basis of authority is, why we have unmarked, untrained federal officials sticking people into unmarked vans. And I want to drill down on his secret army and secret police. So that's going to be my line of questioning.
Do you plan to discuss the firing of Jeffrey Berman at SDNY?
Yes. So other Democratic members of the House Judiciary Committee will ask them questions along those lines. I think we also wanted to show that Bill Barr is a man of little credibility. He lied when he told American people that pepper spray is not a chemical. It is, in fact, a chemical. He lied when he said that through Operation Legend, they arrested 200 people in Kansas. Turned out, I think it was about one. He lied about the Mueller report when it first came out. He has made a number of lies directly to American people. And so I think we want to show that his credibility is sorely lacking.
Is there an appetite in Congress to impeach Bill Barr, and do you think that he should be impeached?
I think he should be impeached. I think as a matter of timing, it's not going to happen. There's an election in less than 4 months. The American people can decide if they want to fire Donald Trump and Bill Barr. And I trust the American people to make the right decision.
So speaking of abuses of power, let's talk about Roger Stone's commutation. Is there going to be legal pushback? I touched on this last week in my interview with Kamala Harris. Bill Barr had said outright during a congressional testimony that pardoning in exchange for protection would be a crime. Here's the clip.
Do you believe a president could lawfully issue a pardon in exchange for the recipient's promise to not incriminate him?
No, that would be a crime.
And yet that's exactly what happened with the commutation of Roger Stone. Roger Stone had literally said, he knows I was under enormous pressure to turn on him. It would have eased my situation considerably, but I didn't. You can't turn on someone unless you have something incriminating. So he makes it perfectly clear that he did. So is Trump's commutation of Roger Stone, by Bill Barr's own definition, illegal, a crime?
I believe it is. I believe what Donald Trump did is evidence of either bribery or obstruction of justice, and I believe an investigation should be open. So that's another question we're going to ask Bill Barr. At the same time, if the American people choose to fire Donald Trump in November, then on January 21st, the next Attorney General or acting Attorney General can open an investigation into Donald Trump's alleged crimes, both his commutation of Roger Stone as well as an array of other potential crimes Donald Trump engaged in.
So is there a chance for Stone's commutation to be rescinded?
So what would happen is you can't reverse what the president has done, but what you could do is if the president committed a crime, you can investigate him, and if he in fact met the elements of the crime when he's no longer president, he could go to prison.
Which is ironic because, I mean, you can have Trump trying to help Roger Stone escape a crime and incriminate himself in the process and possibly get himself, in legal trouble for that.
That is also how our system works. The Supreme Court had a recent ruling where they made a very big deal of the fact that no one is above the law, including the president. And that's why they allowed criminal prosecutors to go after his tax returns.
So you're a veteran, you're a colonel in the Air Force. What's happening with the fact that Putin placed bounties on American soldiers' heads and Trump knew but opted to do nothing? Is Trump just riding this out until November?
It is completely shocking to me that the President of the United States still has not been able to utter one sentence condemning Vladimir Putin. We know from both the public reporting as well as what the White House has said the following facts. The White House has not denied that the CIA assessed Russia paid money to people to kill U.S. troops. The White House has not denied that this intelligence showed up in the president's daily brief in February. The White House has also not denied that Russia has been arming Taliban fighters. The White House has also not denied that recently Russia has been hacking COVID-19 research centers in the United States. And yet Donald Trump cannot condemn Putin. I don't know why, when it comes to Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump takes a knee, but it is deeply troubling. And I think there's something going on. And for 3.5 years, we'll be trying to get to the bottom of it. I think we need to keep looking at that issue.
And in fact, he just spoke with Putin on the phone a few days ago and again refused to broach the topic.
Unfortunately, what ends up happening is when Donald Trump appears weak and incapable of standing up to Russia, it makes Russian behavior more aggressive, more overt. You see them taking bolder actions that are against U.S. national security interests. So this is just a complete failure on the President of the United States. I don't really understand why he views Putin as his friend. It is a really bizarre relationship.
Well, I think there might be one obvious reason that everybody kind of understands.
Hopefully we'll find out one day.
Reporting came out that Trump told the UK ambassador Woody Johnson to steer the British Open to Trump Turnberry. Trump came out and denied the claim. Why not compel Woody Johnson then to testify for the House and ask him? Because if this is true and he says that it's not, then he's committed a federal crime. And if he says it is, well, then Trump got caught lying against irrefutable evidence.
I would love to do that. I think we should issue a subpoena to Woody Johnson. Unfortunately, what has ended up happening is the Trump administration has launched this unprecedented obstruction of the American people in Congress by basically refusing multiple subpoenas, refusing to have witnesses appear before Congress, refusing to have witnesses provide documents, and then they've gone the litigation route, which takes a long time to resolve. That's why I've introduced legislation that would allow the House of Representatives to execute our inherent contempt powers. So the Supreme Court has upheld that Congress has the inherent contempt power, which means, for example, we can impose monetary penalties on witnesses that violate our subpoenas. And what my legislation would do is simply put in procedures into the House rules to allow us to execute this power. This legislation does not need approval by the U.S. Senate nor the president. It's simply a change to our House rules. And if we can get that through, then I think we can put in a incentive for witnesses to show up. Otherwise, they'll get penalized.
If this is an inherent House power, why aren't you able to exercise it now?
Because you would need procedures to execute it, and there would have to be a due process that is followed. And right now, the House rules don't have that in there. And so my legislation puts in the due process protections for the witness, and it puts in the procedures for the fine. So, for example, it caps the fine at up to $100,000. It allows time periods for the witness to negotiate a resolution. It provides for the full House to vote on the actual fine. So you just have to put in rules to allow the House to execute this power.
So Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez was verbally accosted by Ted Lieu of Florida. Have you heard any Republican express any discontent with this, express any dissatisfaction with the fact that he did this?
Again, the lack of spines on the part of my Republican colleagues is a tremendous disappointment to the American people, as well as to Democrats in Congress. But they have been completely, essentially silent on this issue. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez gave an amazing speech on the floor in responding to what Representative Yoho did. Everyone should listen to her speech.
So you're on the House Progressive Caucus. You were an author of Medicare for All. How did you feel about the results of the Biden-Sanders task force? Is there anything that surprised you or anything you'd like to see go further?
I think it's great that there was a Biden-Sanders unity task force, and I support what they did and what they have achieved. And hopefully this will send a signal to every Democrat in November that essentially there's only going to be two people that are going to be president next term. It's either going to be Joe Biden or it's going to be Donald Trump. And if you don't vote for Joe Biden, it's really essentially a vote for Donald Trump.
Well said. I completely agree. So I know that you and your family live in the suburbs. Do you have a plan regarding where to live when Joe Biden abolishes them?
So Donald Trump has, I think, still been unable to figure out that the American people have moved on from his antics. Large proportions of American people, overwhelming majorities now, no longer trust the president. They know that he speaks in hyperbole, in lies, and in exaggeration. So when he says things like Joe Biden's going to abolish the suburbs, no one believes him. And again, that's one reason he's flailing in the polls, because he can't make anything stick against Joe Biden. And the more extreme that Trump gets, the even less credibility that he has.
Right. I mean, we've heard, attacks against Joe Biden saying that he's, in cognitive decline, and yet at the same time, he's an Antifa super soldier who's going to, bring extremist ruin to the United States. So I think that, the fact that they can't find any argument that's going to stick has presented itself on numerous occasions.
I've been on a number of virtual events with Vice President Biden. He is amazing. He is compassionate, empathetic. He is articulate. He really has a grip on what the majority of American people are feeling. And I look forward to debates because the American people will see that the person who is mentally unstable and in decline is Donald Trump.
Is the guy who's bragging about the fact that he can identify an elephant on a piece of paper.
Correct.
All right. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime, Brian.